Adventist Reflections.
Now, to discuss character building ideas, here is your host, Dr. Danzie.
Hi family, welcome back to the Adventist Reflections Podcast. You might be wondering, what is Dr. Danzie doing here at this time of the week? Well, I have prepared for you a very special episode where Kyle Morrison from the Adventist On Fire Podcast speaks about the idea of self-care. We talk about that, the psychological benefits of social interactions, and board gaming. So check it out and endure the interview. I had fun and I hope that you can have fun too by listening to it. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Adventist Reflections Podcast. Today we have a special episode. You know that we only release one biblical psychology episode every month, but I think this episode it has to be here right now because of something really exciting that in my opinion is exciting, is coming. And so I invited for this episode Kyle Morrison. To me, Kyle Morrison has been one of those people who have been podcasting in Australia for a while in my experience, because I am fairly new to this process and this idea. And but I would like Kyle to tell us about who he is. I don't know him that well, so you'll get to know him as much as I will get to know him on this episode, and I am excited about it too. So Kyle, welcome to the Adventist Reflections Podcast. How are you going today?
Yeah, Dan, thanks for having me, man. Yeah, doing well. It's early on a Sunday morning, if we want to put a date stamp on this. And so, it's good to be awake. Good to be awake.
Thank you for being flexible and accepting it. I know it's usually for Adventists, I don't know what your experience is, but at least in my Adventism, it's like Saturday nights usually become like a late night. Like it's one of those things that catch up with friends, catch up with everything else, or even projects. I know you're on projects. And so, anyhow, so thanks for waking up. Sure. So, Kyle, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are? Let's start with that idea of who is Kyle Morrison?
Yeah. Born in Brisbane, in Queensland, sunny Queensland.
Nice.
And spent 21 years of my life on the Gold Coast.
Okay.
Went through Adventist schools and Gold Coast Adventist School and then Brisbane Adventist College.
Right.
And then left school early, and then decided that I needed to be educated after I didn't enjoy work for 5 years, and so I came down to college. Okay. So I've been living in Cooranbong or near Cooranbong now for this is my 10th year.
Okay.
And so I studied marketing.
Okay.
Did a degree in marketing business undergrad, and then after I finished that, I realized that I didn't achieve what I came here to achieve, and that was to work for the church and to do theology. And so I went back and did a graduate diploma in ministry and theology.
Right.
So I quit high school early because I didn't like education, and then I ended up getting 5 years of it down here. So
nice.
That was my punishment.
No regrets? No regrets for that?
No, I don't think so. Like 4 years, to do a 4-year undergrad in theology was like a really big commitment for somebody who'd never moved away from the Gold Coast. And so I think to commit to 3 years and not having to learn Greek was just a lot simpler of a step for me.
Okay.
And then, then after that, I had a year off, and then 2 more years wasn't so bad. But 6 years of Cooranbong before I achieved what I thought I came down here to achieve. So.
Okay. So have you achieved what you thought that you came out to achieve at the beginning? Are you there yet?
I don't think I'll ever be there because I'm a bit of a perfectionist.
Okay, so there's always a goal
when it comes to achievements. You know, I've recently been getting some coaching, and I've recently learned that perfectionists actually have no standards. It's not that they have a high standard; it's that they have no standards because, you know, when you actually get there, it's still not enough. You have to go further, and so. That's a dangerous word in an Adventist podcast, I know, but I'm talking about, projects and trying to achieve things in your life. And anyways, so the goal of actually coming down here was to study theology and to work for God's church. And so either within the organization or externally of it, to add value to the kingdom, to add value to Adventism. That's what I committed to after my conversion, and I think I've achieved that in that I am working for the organization, and I think I'm adding value to the church. And so when I get to a point where I feel like I'm not adding value, and I'm not worth the money that I'm costing the tithe returner, then I'll find something else to do.
Right.
But for now, I think I am. So please let me know if I'm not.
Okay, it sounds like you are. I mean, and it sounds that before we started the episode, I mean, the very little things that you were sharing with me, it sounds to me that you're adding some value and you have some good ideas where you are at. So let me clarify just to make sure that I got it right. So you had a goal, which was studying theology, working for the church, and you have done both. Yet, obviously, you haven't got there yet because you're a perfectionist. It might be a smoke screen, but maybe it's just you got a goal and you reached it, and there might be another goal. And I think and that's okay. Yeah. Okay. So do we call you a pastor,
I think I
Kyle?
did hit a point. Sometimes.
Okay.
So I think, so technically, I'm doing my internship still. This is my 4th year of employment for the North New South Wales Conference, but technically my 2nd year of pastoral internship. So I'm an intern pastor.
Okay.
After December, if all the right people tick all the right boxes and say yes, then I become a licensed minister.
Right.
I think that's when you can officially call yourself a pastor. And then 3 or 4 years of not stealing money or doing the wrong thing, they'll consider you for ordination.
I'm understanding that criteria is quite low. I don't know. I always like to
there's
think
lots
that
more.
it's
There's
pretty
lots more things. There's a big manual that you have to go through, but
okay.
That's the quick version.
Yeah, all right. I always thought that as soon as you finish theology, whatever that is, whether it's a postgrad or an undergrad, you are straight away a pastor if you are working within the church or receiving some tithe money.
You can certainly be employed as a pastor, and you're on a pastoral pay scale of some sort. But technically, I'm on an intern pay scale. After I think there's 5, 6, 7 levels of internship now, and then you move up to a pastoral wage.
Clarify this for me. This is just curiosity, nothing to do with what we're talking here. But is this the same system that we have across the General Conference, or this is just Australian or SPD? The levels I'm talking about.
I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure it's SPD wide.
Okay.
Well, actually, that's probably wrong. It's probably our specific pay scales are probably for this union.
Okay.
And then within this union, there's a scheme that they tried to roll out. I know North New South Wales initially said no to the new package that they tried to roll out, but then they tweaked the package to include a range rather than a set amount. There's actually a range. And so North New South Wales now fits within that range, and therefore they fit within the scheme for the AUC, which is the Australian Union Conference.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for clarifying.
So that's pretty much the same Australia-wide.
All right, cool. Do you have a congregation, an actual church family?
50% of my role with the conference is just as a local church pastor.
Nice.
Not just but it is as a local church pastor.
Sure.
And I work with Boris Jovanov, who's actually
right. I know Boris.
A buddy from high school. We're at Brisbane Adventist College together, and now we get to serve together at Newcastle Adventist Church, and an awesome group of people and an awesome little church. They're originally in the city. They sold a shed in the city, a tilt slab shed in the city, and we've actually just recently bought a Jehovah's Witness church in Warners Bay. So literally I just preached the last sermon in the rental church yesterday. And then next week is our first Sabbath in the new church in Warners Bay. So exciting times at the moment as we transition into a new venue and get set up into a space to call our own again.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. It sounds like you guys are very active, and who would have thought, high school buddies become ministers together? That sounds exciting to me. Cool.
Never would have guessed. He surprised me, but I'm sure I surprised some people as well. So.
I think I know where you're coming from. Good. All right. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, look, one of the things as we go into this process, there's one thing. I have a section in this podcast that I call it biblical psychologist. I'm a shrink, so that's an interest of mine. I'm biased. And so everybody who I invite to come and have a conversation with, I ask a similar question, and I wanted to ask you the same question. Whatever you come with, it's fine. And it's the idea of, well, biblical psychology, the idea of psychology in the Bible. I do have this biased perception that a lot of the times we perceive in Christianity, perhaps in Adventism, that they don't marry together, they don't gel together. And so the question really is what do you think that about this? Do you think there is or isn't room for the Bible and psychology to be cordially in line with each other? Is there any...
I guess your question's probably more related to the current academic psychological framework.
Okay.
In that, is there room for the Bible to influence? I feel like that might be where your question's coming from.
Okay.
Is that true?
Yeah. Well, I like to be a practical guy, or I like to think that I am, and I am coming on from the academic influences the practice. You're right. The theory influences practice. So I think about the practical aspect of psychology. So when I think about that, I think about is anything that psychology brings to the world so bad or so good that Christians should or shouldn't be involved in? And what are the things that we should be cautious about? Because I acknowledge there is a lot of things out there that really go out of the realm of Christianity, and you can tell that.
Yeah, I certainly think that the Bible has a lot to add in the psychology space, mainly because I guess my only thoughts on this matter have probably helped to be formed by a book that I recently listened to called The 12 Rules for Life.
Okay.
by Jordan Peterson. And so quite interesting to hear his perspective. He doesn't necessarily consider himself to be an outspoken Christian or follower of God. When people ask him, do you believe in God? He says, I don't like that question. You know, what's belief to you? What's God to you? You know, he's a real interesting character. And so I was just interested in his book. And the way that he sort of walks you through the book of Genesis. And of course, the book of Genesis is not just a short story. It's thousands of years of human history. He's essentially, like, I guess one of the take-home points for me was that here's a book that is a compilation of thousands of years of human psychology, you know, and these are the experiences from generations to generations to generations. There's obviously going to be a bit of wisdom, if not in factual history, then simply in stories that need to be passed down for generations. There's obviously some things here worth learning from. There's obviously the same threads of truth, the same elements of truth throughout these 66 books over, thousands of years written, and in Genesis itself. Maybe we should look at that. Maybe there's some value that can add to our lives there. And I think that's a great perspective to have, even if you don't want to believe that the Bible is inspired, even if you don't believe that the Bible is factual or historical. In terms of understanding psychology, understanding ourselves, understanding how to move forward and add value to this world, there's probably a bit of wisdom to be gained in that work.
I love it. I agree with you. You know, when I think about, you mentioned the book of Genesis, and from Genesis all onwards, there's a lot of things that I have observed that we have been taught, described, or spoken about from undergrad to postgrad courses on psychology that have a lot of basis of Christianity. It's similar to when I think about the way our government in Australia is set up. I mean, a lot of our values and morals are based on Christian values. Whether we want to like it or not, we always talk about America. For those who are there, you know that it's founded on a Christian-based society and principles. We don't tend to talk that much about that in Australia. I mean, who says, God blesses Australia, or it's like God bless America? But we do have those values embedded in our society. And the same thing in psychology.
It's hard. I guess it's just hard to get away from God's law, right? Every country, every civilization, every group of people that chooses to coexist has to have a law. And there just happens to be a very historic law that was a pretty smart system, like don't steal, don't murder, just the basics. I think that most people can agree that there's some pretty good things to abide by. And all of a sudden, when you start abiding by those things, well, the other things in the Bible start to make sense as well. And so why wouldn't you follow the majority of those, if not all of those?
For sure. Interestingly enough, I mean, we're talking about, Adventism in terms of, the podcast is called Adventist Reflections, and we have that idea of Sabbath as well. When you talk about the idea of the commandments, don't steal, don't cheat, don't do all this stuff, don't kill. The Sabbath resting, we in society, we do believe that we should rest, that we should have a time to care for self. I like what you're saying. I like where you're coming from. One of the things that clinicians, and with that in mind, one of the things that clinicians in mental health keep on speaking about is the concept of self-care. And I personally believe that this is not just something that we come with randomly, but even prior to psychology, the Bible, as we were speaking about, encourages us to be mindful of the way we present ourselves before God. I mean, when you think about it, if I were to cherry pick a verse in the Bible, that one in Romans 12:1 and 2 always calls my attention. Paul is encouraging the Christian believers to present themselves as a living sacrifice, in body and in mind. And that's part of the will of God for us. And yet sometimes, I know that I get caught a lot in work and even church activities, and self-care at times becomes in the back, takes place in the back burner. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know what your perception is, but I have well-meant Christians that come both as friends and also sometimes as patients, who feel guilty about having some time for self-care. Like sometimes in psychology, we call it a me time, because, it's all about me. That's selfish. That's egocentrical. We shouldn't do that. What do you reckon about that idea?
I guess, my own experience, anytime I recognize that there's a problem starting to develop, some imbalance, if I'm starting to feel down, even recently, spending time with a friend, and that friend was starting to feel down. And one of our mentors said to us, how much exercise have you done recently?
Right.
And he was like, oh, yeah, I haven't done any actually. And so when you think about it, we have the 8 laws of health. And it's just very hard to get away from the 8 laws of health. And even if you don't think about the 8 laws of health, there's still, those things that you need. You need good water, you need good food. Sunshine makes us feel good. Exercise makes us feel good. And I think I always just revert to those things. I've pulled up the 8 laws of health just now on my computer, and I'm just thinking, I probably should put that somewhere so that I can, in a more balanced way, consider all 8 of those, because that's probably the best form of self-care I can give myself whenever something feels out of balance. Just get back to those 8 things and make sure I'm doing them well. And if that means I have to say no to a bit of work and slow down on some of that stuff, it's going to be better in the long run that I focus on the 8 laws of health and getting myself right before I pursue work.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. And, one of the things when I think about this idea of self-care and taking those laws of health that God left for us is that, sometimes I think God knew this. I mean, I'm 100% sure he knew it. He knew that we needed it. And sometimes I think we need to recognize that there is more to us than we can handle. Sometimes we take this verse, Philippians 4:13, we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. But I think, it might be speaking of spiritual matters. When you think about it, I can say I can buy a Rolls Royce with Christ who helps me, as if Christ is most interested in having a Rolls Royce versus me having eternal life. And so it becomes a bit like a fallacy in terms of our spiritual beliefs. And I think, when you think about having self-care, if we decline looking after ourselves, if we decline having some time when we can follow these laws of health, including perhaps finding some help from somebody like a peer, like a mentor, like a supervisor, like somebody who can help us out, perhaps we are declining to be the Christians that God calls us to be, because as you mentioned, he left some loss of health that requires some me time. When you think about exercise, I'm a father. I have teenage girls, and when I think about this, my girls, I spend time with them. But if I were not to spend time with myself, because I think if I spend time exercising, then I'm still in time for my girls. I'm going to not be serving them as a father myself, right? And even as a church member or leader or whatever the case might be, we need to have that time, for sure. I wanted to ask you, I think you already brought it up, but I wanted to ask about aspects that you would consider important for the well-being of people in line of this idea of self-care. I mean, you mentioned the loss of health. Some of our listeners might not have a clue. What are you talking about? I mean, usually Adventists know that, but what are the 8 loss of health that we're thinking of here?
Sure. I guess the most memorable acronym that is used, that has got the most traction, is New Start. Right. NEWSTART, New Start. And that's essentially nutrition, exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, air, rest, and trust. Okay. So obviously there's Weimar College, there's Neil Nedley. They do a lot of work in this space. If you're looking for resources, just Google that, Neil Nedley, and Weimar College, Weimar Institute, whatever it's called. Right. I think for me, exercise is probably the thing that I consider to be the most important and the hardest to get. Okay. All right. I think that, like, I don't find nutrition is necessarily that hard for me to achieve because I'm super particular about food. I really like good tasting food. I really like healthy food. Okay. And so a lazy meal for me is probably a highly nutritious meal for somebody else, even if that is just haystacks in a bowl, taco salad kind of stuff. Like, it's fresh salad, it's beans, and no nasties added sort of thing, apart from the corn chips. Right. But when I get really serious, I'll replace the corn chips with rice or quinoa or something. Or get the organic ones. And so, yeah, that's right, organic ones. That'll make me feel better at least, and that'll be a placebo effect, which is psychology. Good work. So nutrition, that's fine. Water, we've got this like 5-stage reverse osmosis purifier in the house. And I always carry a water bottle. Like, some people tease me about it, and I always lose my water bottles. I carry water. That's not hard. Okay. Sunshine, that's a little bit hard in the winter in Kurrambong, but blah, blah, blah. Generally, the things on that list aren't that hard for me to achieve. But exercise, that seems to be the area that I need to come back to and focus on more often and really put some effort into. Right. Because that's the easiest thing to ignore when I feel like I'm busy and I'm trying to achieve bigger things as it relates to work or hobbies. Or I guess I just need to make exercise a hobby, and I just really need to focus on temperance and allowing myself to have some balance in my life and do that hobby. Right. So it's all about that. I mean, some of the things that we talk about that you can really integrate it, which is what I'm hearing you do in your everyday life, eating well, drinking water, and all that kind of stuff. But exercise, you do have to take some time aside from everything else you do, right? Yeah. I feel like it's hard to. I guess I've got this constant, like, this will make sense later as well. I feel like I've got this constant drive to achieve something. Right. I feel like. I don't feel like I'm cocky when I say that I've been put here on this earth to achieve something bigger than normal. Okay. That's just something that I seem to have been born with, and I think it comes from my father's side. Not that my mum's not special and isn't adding value to the world, but I feel like that entrepreneurial spirit and that pursuit and that drive comes from my dad. And I feel like being so driven to do whatever that is, whenever I figure that out, that drive is so strong that it's easier for me to ignore the other things that waste time or take time away from that drive. Right. And so I just haven't been able to incorporate exercise into that drive, and therefore it's easier for me to drive rather than to exercise. Okay. Yeah. So it's your dream, passions, goals, and perhaps this drive that is embedded in you, perhaps learn is taking over. Sometimes, a lot of the times. Okay, all right. Yeah. There is this. You ever heard of a book, a program? It's not really a program, but it has become a program. It has been marketed somehow, called Mini Habits. You ever heard of that? Mini Habits from Stephen? No, I haven't.
Okay, so Stephen Guys, I was just Googling the name of the guy. I remember the program. I always forget the author, but I think we need to be fair to the guy. So Stephen Guys, he basically said one day, I find out that I cannot exercise all the time really well and constantly. And, the habit has been dying. And so he found himself joining gyms and going for a little bit of time, having that drive, and then eventually not coming at all. And so he developed this program where he says, what I need to do is I need to develop a habit whereby I am constant and consistent. And so he started to do, I think it was a push-up. So 1 push-up a day. Mm-hmm. He said, if I can have 1 to 5 push-ups a day, that's all I have to do. And I have to make myself known that this is a habit that I'm doing. All I have to do is 5. And, it doesn't sound like a lot to do 1 or 5 push-ups. But what he says is, if I can do that every day, if all I do is 5, I accomplish my goal and I have exercise. If I'm on the 5th push-up and then I feel like, hey, I can keep on going. I'm already here. I already have my shorts. I already have my runners. I can probably do more than that. I'll go and do more. And what he found out is that he ended up having a full workout for almost a week. Because he felt like, this is a bit silly. I'm already here. I'm already taking the time. Let's just keep on going. And sometimes he didn't, though. Sometimes he just managed to 5 or 10 and say like, okay, that's it. But I accomplished the goal that I set up to be. So my brain is saying I have a new pathway, no failure. Anyhow,
that's awesome. There was this period in my life in the last few years where I set myself the goal of 10 push-ups a day.
Okay.
So maybe I just set the bar. Maybe I set the bar too high. Maybe I should scale that back to 1. But I tell you, man, when I was doing it, it felt wonderful. It was only 10 push-ups, right? But I was literally having dreams about me doing push-ups, and so I felt like I was getting the exercise in my sleep and when I woke up.
Right. Wow,
yeah,
there you go.
That felt great.
Developing new neural pathways, new brain pathways.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks for the book suggestion. I'll get that.
That's okay. So, look, within this loss of health, we have this idea of temperance. And this idea of temperance catches my attention. We usually in Adventism, we talk about, no caffeine, no alcohol, no smoking, and et cetera, having a balance. And but we maybe we do, but I don't feel that we do enough of it. I speak much about
I was just going to say we talk about it, but we don't actually do it ourselves.
That's right. And within that, there is this concept and this idea of spending some time, and it's part of that self-care, right? Developing social networks and making ourselves available to develop those social networks. So when I was thinking about what we're gonna get into, which is the exciting part, I think about the drives that you were sharing with us just before, the projects that you have in mind, is I was driving to work and I was thinking about this idea and reflecting on my self-care and reflecting about your project. And I thought, the project that Kyle is doing in many ways is attached to my personal well-being. It's part of my temperance anyhow. And it has always been, I don't know why, but it's probably my personality perhaps. I guess for people to understand this, it will make a lot more sense if I just were to ask you, if you can tell us about your projects and how this could, I have ideas of how this could be applied into the self-care of people, of Adventists. This is purely Adventist stuff. So if you're not an Adventist, keep on listening, because one day you'll become one. Not because we want you to be an Adventist just for the sake of it, but because, you'll find good people around in Adventism. So what is it that is driving you so much at the moment? Could be genetics, epigenetics, passion, whatever, called perfectionism, that is taken away from your exercise. Tell us.
Yeah, so the main excuse for me being a few kilos overweight recently, because I can come up with a different excuse at any time.
Okay.
But no, basically I'm working on a board game. The board game is called GoYe, and it is essentially, it started out as this like really epic Adventist board game, but I honestly, there's no reason why anybody couldn't play this game and enjoy it. There's nothing that's so Adventist about it that would exclude anybody from participating or from learning the lingo and taking part. So, yeah, it's a board game. It's a board game. It's fun. It adds identity, passion, purpose, value. I feel like it would be the perfect thing for my 10 to 14-year-olds to start playing at that age. And continue to enjoy playing throughout their teenage years. That's, of course, untested. Untested because I don't have kids, and untested because the game doesn't exist yet.
Okay.
But I just feel like that's where I'm sort of pitching it, and that's where I'm hoping it will go.
Okay. Well, I'm in line to get one when it comes. We'll talk about when it will come, and I'll test it for you with my girls. So I don't have a 10-year-old anymore.
Maybe you could. You could give me like a psychological review on whether this adds value to the psyche of your kids or to adults even. Sure.
And look, it's funny because my girls can play Catan, and they love playing Catan. And I mean, I don't want to promote Catan, but it's just something that comes to my mind. I know
if they can play Catan, they can play this.
There you go. Okay, so I think we already have it settled. We'll get one either way, but. I mentioned.
How old are your girls? Can I ask?
Yeah, sure, for sure. One is almost 12 in a month, and the other one is 14. So she's gonna be 15 in a couple of months.
Sweet. Yeah.
So
we put 13 plus on the box.
Right.
That's mainly for legal reasons. It's a lot easier to not market a toy towards kids.
Right.
There's a lot less testing required.
Oh, you're kidding! Wow.
But I think we had an 8-year-old who sort of started to pick it up the other night, and so. Yeah, I wanted people to know that it was available to under 13s as well.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I think if look, I think sometimes the regulations don't make any favors. So, all right, good. So I was saying to my wife the other day, I don't know, a long time ago, when we started playing Catan, that I do believe that Catan becomes an addictive game, and especially in Adventism. I have observed that. I went to the Waitara camp. We've been serving them for the church camp for doing the children's program, and the youth people always bring Catan, and that's where I played. I think the first time or something like that, and I understood it, and then you forget about it if you don't play it often. But then we go on, and there's an addictive element. Talking about marketing and psychology, there's an addictive element to Catan, and I have observed it, which is dopamine release every time you get a resource. As soon as you roll the dice, you're expecting for it to fall in your resource. And if you get something, there is a little bit of dopamine. So people like to play it because but anyhow, it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. No, it's not an addictive thing that you're going to stop.
I will confess that I've specifically tried to make this game addictive, but for good reasons.
And you have, if it's... perhaps addiction is not the right word, but yeah, if you don't make it that way, if you don't have a release of endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, something good in your brain, I mean, why would you want to come and play it?
Of course, and specifically because of the reason that Catan is addictive is exactly the reason why we should have a board game that is addictive.
Right.
We're going to spend time playing games. So if we're going to spend time playing games, why don't we spend time playing games that actually add value to who we are as a people and what we've been put here to do? Not ashamed about that whatsoever.
Okay. So tell us, let's go backwards a little bit. Why?
Yeah.
Are you a gamer?
I'm not as much of a gamer as you would think that I am.
Okay.
But I certainly have played games over the course of my life.
Okay.
And I think more specifically, Monopoly I was a real fan of Monopoly growing up. I think what sort of killed that fire was the fact that nobody wanted to play with me. I didn't have a lot of friends my age that enjoyed playing it.
Okay.
So I was a bit solo on that pursuit, and so it didn't last forever. But I always, I think I'm a details guy, and so I always just observe the details and what makes something fun. Okay. I was quite addicted to Need for Speed, the computer game, for quite a while.
Okay.
And I'd finished it, and I was really good at drifting on, version 2 or version 3 of that computer game. And all of a sudden something clicked when I was sort of in my later teenage years. And I just decided that was the biggest waste of time ever. And I just couldn't bear to play it whatsoever. I think that was probably encouraged by the fact that my brother was always better than me at all the games that we played together. And so if he was better than me and I couldn't win, then there was no point in me playing anymore. And so I decided that was that was a waste of time. It didn't add value. It didn't get me closer towards my goals or towards happiness. And so I stopped playing.
Okay.
And so why this board game? Well, there was me and a couple of other friends, Brad and Kyle, and we were sitting around at a friend's house, and guess what? There was sort of nothing to do. And when there's nothing to do, that's the time when you sort of pull your phone out and you start wasting time doing other useless things. And so I thought, how about we create something that is not necessarily a waste of time, but fills this space with fun, but it also adds value. And it's also something that everybody can get behind and support as a real passion project, something that adds nostalgia value, something that gets people excited. And yeah, that's sort of where it all started.
Okay. Right. So basically, you had nothing else to do, and you thought, let's just do something of value. And that's good.
And it's not that I had nothing else to do. The truth of the matter is, it was the core idea, or the strong bones of the core idea most likely happened on a Friday night. And It was a Friday night, was sitting around at a friend's house, and guess what? The TV's not on a Friday night. You try not to talk, like we specifically were trying not to talk about all the garbage of the world, all the other things, all the stuff that you can talk about on the other days of the week. We probably shouldn't be talking about on the Sabbath. And so I guess that's why it was easier to chat about a project that adds value to the church, to Christianity, to the Great Commission, going to the ends of the world. It's fun for me to dream, and so I felt like Friday night was a safe place for me to dream about that. That dreaming didn't stop and continued through to Saturday night more extensively, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So you're telling me the story, Kyle. I cannot but remember that. I think maybe you came for this period of our times for such a time as this. I mean, honestly, I'm a addict. Recovered addicts from gaming. I'll be honest. I mean, back in the time, I play a lot of computer video games. My parents didn't allow us to have Nintendos or any consoles, but we had a computer, and they wouldn't get close to the computer. So the computer was the easiest way. And so I spent years and years in gaming zones. When they used to have the MSN zone of gaming, playing a lot of Age of Empires and mythology, and I was pretty good at it.
That was fun.
I know. And then I was at university, and I realized that it was taking time from other things that could potentially increase my brain capacity. I mean, even though you could argue that Age of Empires could increase your abilities of recognition, attention, concentration, and all sorts of things. But anyhow, so as a gamer, and I think as a family, my family. We actually, I don't know if I should say this in public, but we literally went, contacted a local carpenter, Boyd. He's a really good guy. If anybody's ever in Gingin, Queensland, go to Boyd's shop. He's amazing. He did a table for us, which is like a chess table that we can put on the corner in the living room. We have a very small house, so it had to be fitting, but it's massive. You literally could fit inside as a person, as a grown-up person. And we built that so that we can put all of our board games inside, and we have heaps, man. Like that has formed parts of our self-care as a family. That's not the only thing we spend. I mean, it's not that we try to avoid talking about meaningful things with our girls and as a couple, but it's part of what we do, and with our friends as well. And so I can tell you that it's really hard to find a good nurturing game. I usually go for those games that instigate your brain capacity, like Blockhouse, like Pictionary can be good and creative, whatever. We even have one called Mathletics or Math something. No, Mathletics is that schooling thing. Math something. And I have Googled, yeah. And I have Googled, I Googled the idea of Christian games, Bible games, and you always have the usual trivia stuff, right? Like the usual whatever, Nothing like what I'm hearing that you are developing, that you're creating.
Yeah.
So
that's true. I guess I have seen. Okay, so I guess as part of my research and development phase, I spent some time in the ABC. I used to work in the ABC, so I knew what I was getting myself into.
Okay.
But as suspected, there was a couple of games by Review and Herald called The Life of Daniel, Life of Christ, Life of Paul, and that's essentially a fairly average or regular looking map with a bit of a journey, like a bit of a snakes and ladders sort of a path laid out. And a stack of quiz questions. You get a question right, and you move forward 2 spaces. You get a question wrong, you move back 1 space. I think that's all. I think that's all. I can't remember any other exciting parts of the game. And so I guess when that's what's on offer, it's no surprise. Not that those games are bad in any way, but it's no surprise that we get addicted to Catan instead.
Yeah, because they're more stimulating. There's more thinking, more strategy. You actually have to think a lot more of what you can do to win, to progress, to succeed. And the other ones is just pretty straightforward. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
And not to like downplay those games. They have a purpose. Their purpose was to increase Bible knowledge, right? Because what could be more important than Bible knowledge? Nothing. And so I don't at all dislike those games. But you're right. I think that we need to add some value. There's enough of us now. There's 20 million Adventists in the world. I'm sure that we and other Christians that are welcome to play this game would enjoy playing a strategy game that adds value in the space of discipleship, church planting, church growth. It just made sense to me to go in that direction.
So why don't you tell us? I mean, you already talked about church planting, church growth. Sure. What are the mechanics of this game? Why would anybody who is listening to us say, like, I'm gonna subscribe to this thing and wait for it to be released, and I'm gonna be at the first of the buying queue?
Sure. So GoYe, the point of the game is the most total member involvement before the second coming wins.
Okay.
So that's the high level perspective.
Right.
Now a bit of a history lesson here. The initial game that we did create was the person with the most baptisms in heaven wins. Okay. But we didn't actually want to like trivialize the concept of gaining baptisms. The game, somebody said to me when they saw it recently, they commented on Facebook, they said, is this some sort of like satirical joke, or is this the truth? Like, does this thing actually exist? And I said, well, it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B, It is true that when you rip something off and you make a game of it, it becomes a bit of a joke. So I'm not opposed to people thinking this is hilarious or stupid or funny. That's fine. People can think those things. But Sam Neves, the Associate Communications Director for the General Conference, when I was talking to him about the game, he said, instead of baptisms, why not call it total member involvement? And I thought about that and the psychology of that, right? In that a member who is involved and adding value is far better than somebody who simply went under the water.
Yeah.
And so the most total member involvement, the most people involved in the cause, when Jesus comes again, that's how you find the winner. And essentially you gain involved members by doing a number of things. For example, every single time it's your turn starts with a free church plant. You plant a church somewhere touching the borders of the area where you already are. So the map is split up into 10 divisions and 58 conferences. And everybody starts with a church touching Battle Creek.
Right.
And then as you go to take your turn, you place another free church plant on a conference bordering on one of the 4 conferences touching Battle Creek, wherever you've chosen to put your first church.
Okay.
And then on your next turn, you plant another free church plant somewhere touching that. So immediately you as a team or as opponents, however you decide to play, start spreading out across the world map, because every turn you get a free church plant. And so the psychology essentially of that, this is great. I'm finally realizing why this is good for a psychology podcast, is that church planting should be first and foremost something that we do without thinking about it. Right. Instead of that crazy afterthought when our church is bulging at the seams or we're having a worship war.
Right.
Let's be more intentional about planting churches. And that's the very first part of your turn. The second phase of your turn is to roll the dice and to partake in life, essentially. And so you roll the dice and you'll land on church.
Yeah.
When you go to church, you earn scripture. If you land on work, you earn finance. If you land on a board meeting, you might earn some diplomacy.
Right.
If you land on outreach ministry, you'll earn some experience. So there's ways that you can earn just those basic 5 resources by participating in life.
Okay.
On top of that, there's also life cards.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a life card is sort of like a random life event that happened to one of the pioneers or Ellen White in history.
Okay.
And so each card has a quote on it from past times.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Uriah Smith had a leg amputated.
Right.
And that gains you some experience, but not necessarily anything else. It wasn't a fun experience. There's death in the family. That's an experience. When Ellen White lost his kid, or when Jane Andrews lost his kids, his daughter specifically. So just different life events. But then there's literature evangelism. Well, literature evangelism is lucrative financially. And so with that card, you actually get yourself some finance, some experience, and some faith.
Right.
And so it's better to draw a life card that adds more resources to your deck, obviously. And so that's a random deck of cards.
Mm.
And with all of these resources that you're collecting, you then get to choose. Here comes the strategy. You then get to choose how to invest those resources in God's kingdom through involved members, through souls won. And so you can plant churches.
Mm-hmm.
You can buy more than the free ones that you're given. And a church plant is worth 5 TMI.
Okay.
You can put conferences on top of churches. Each conference area can have one conference office. Mm-hmm. And so there can be up to 3 churches and a conference office in a conference. So a conference doubles the value of a church. Mm-hmm. The psychology here is the more organized we get, the more additional value or power or impact that our church organization can have. And so the next level up in this game is division level. And when you have a division, it gives you 15 TMI per conference in your division. And we're still actually tweaking all of these numbers just to make sure the game is as balanced as possible.
Okay.
But then the general conference gives you 30 TMI per division on the board. So as the church organization grows, you gain more value in TMI, but that also amplifies the amount of resources you collect when you land on those squares around the outside of the board. So that's roughly the mechanics of it without explaining to you what the special card deck involves.
Sure. Okay. So what I'm hearing is that...
Are you tracking, or is that getting...
Yeah, no. Well, I'm tracking, I guess, because I have played that Catan game, which has a similar twist, but I'm hearing this has a lot more, and I like the additions. As an Adventist, I can track a lot of these things and say, that makes sense. And I wanted to comment on something. Obviously this has a lot of Adventist tricks, but I can see what you were saying, that anybody could play it. And the reality, anybody who is a Christian can play it, because total member involvement, the TMI idea is about really reaching out to the world to know about who God is, who Christ is. It's about GoYe therefore, very, very kind of title too, GoYe therefore and baptize people, teaching them to observe all things, that I have commanded you. Yeah. So the title and the process of the game is such that it encourages just to think about these ideas. There's obviously some Adventist trivia in it, with those cards that you talk about experience, and I love it. All of those quirky things that we don't know about pioneers or people who have come before us. And so I can see Pathfinders playing this just to learn some of these things, to realize that people were human and they went through a lot of things to be involved, to be totally involved in ministry. Okay, yeah, I'm tracking with that. Tell me about the practicalities of the game. So you mentioned that because of legalities, 13 to whatever, but you have had an 8-year-old picking up the game and, getting onto it. Sure. If I'm honest with you, the friends who we played, we retook this Catan idea in Perth in December last year. They had a 6-year-old who was playing Catan, and she was better than me, put it that way. She was really good. So I think some people can pick up these strategies very quickly in this game. So
I'd say knowledge is power in this game as well, and that's really where the special card deck comes in. Okay. So on top of what I just explained, when you start purchasing special cards, things really start to change. And so
Right.
Within that special card deck, there's spiritual gifts, single-use cards, and mission trips. You pull a mission trip card, you're given a destination or multiple destinations that you have to conquer in order to complete that mission trip, and that gives you bonus TMI.
Okay.
And that's sort of like a secret mission that you're on while you're playing the game, and you wouldn't necessarily reveal what that mission is to everybody else. Mm-hmm. There's also spiritual gifts that are revealed to everybody else, and they amplify the way you play in that there's the gift of administration, and there's 3 different cards. And so one of those gives you finance every time somebody else plants a church.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So every time somebody purchases a church, you gain finance because you're just that good at administration that you figured that out. There's spiritual gift of wisdom that gives you a free resource of your choice every single turn because you ask for it in prayer, and God blesses you more in that area because you've got the spiritual gift of wisdom and you know what to ask for. Mm-hmm. For example, there's also evangelism and teaching, and they change the game in other ways. They have their superpowers, if you will. They have their spiritual powers. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You then have, I already explained the mission cards, but the single-use cards are things like a call for volunteers. So every now and then we need to ask volunteers to come and help us do stuff at our church. Mm-hmm. And this card essentially does that same thing in strongly coercing your friends to give the resources from their next turn to you. And so that's a fun card because sometimes they don't want to, but you get to remind them that it's the best thing for kingdom growth. And that's where this game is quite a funny game to play because you've got the backing of the quote on the card, and you know the game can go any which way depending on which special card is played at any time.
Okay. What I'm hearing, Kyle, is that the game has a how will I put it? The game is actually a bit of a teaching of the systems of how biblical teachings in the game. Yeah, that's psychology.
Yeah, not only biblical teachings, but church organizational structure is learned. It's the game of, you could say it's the game of life for Adventists. When we're trying to think of a tagline, it could be easily called the game of Great Commission, a game of life for Adventists. It's essentially will give you a very wide and thorough framework of not only Adventist history, but what we should be doing as a Christian movement. And I think that's why I feel like it would be a great game for kids to play throughout their teen years. Because when I was 19 years old, and I consider that to be my spiritual conversion, there were so many things that I didn't know and didn't understand. And I probably wasn't interested in understanding. But had I have played this game growing up as a youngster, I think I would have been far more interested, or I would have understood far easier because it would have just been ingrained in me. I would have played it multiple times already. I would have understood that these levels of church organization exist. These missionaries went to these places. These spiritual gifts amplify my life in this way. I can go to church and gain scripture, and I can choose to invest that in another church. Right. All these things that add to, the psychology of Adventism for sure. Right.
I love it. I'm looking forward to play it. I haven't told my family about it yet. I'm waiting for the time when it's going to be launched. Why don't you tell us about when is this happening? When are you going to make my dreams come true?
Sure. Dude, I wanted to make your dreams come true 2 years ago, but here's a point I didn't touch on, and you sort of started to mention it before. Mm-hmm. It's not only hard to create a game and make it work and make it balanced and make it enjoyable, but it's a whole nother ball game, and probably a far bigger part of the ball game to actually get that produced, published, distributed.
Okay.
And I think the toughest thing has been not just the artwork and the multiple designers and the packaging and the finding a company that's willing to print the thing.
Okay.
But publishing it, like just the whole concept of publishing it, having the funds to actually order the minimum order quantity. It's a huge process, and so I've come to learn that I always wondered, why hasn't anybody ever done this, and now I fully understand why nobody has done this necessarily. Like, to this scale, a board game with 600 plus pieces is just not a simple thing, and so I'm learning the hard way, but I plan on using this learning to benefit the church in a positive way in more than just one item, more than just one board game that adds value. You know, we hope that there's other things, but the plan is now to launch in July. To finally answer your question, we want to launch the Kickstarter in July, so that we can really put it out there for the world to decide whether or not they actually want this to go ahead. A bit late in the game to try and decide that, but we've already invested thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in the process.
So it's happening either way.
Time to see. Well, it's going to happen in some way because there seems to be enough interest, but whether or not we can get enough interest to launch the ship right now, that's the thing that this Kickstarter will tell us. And so I guess that's why it's important that we network and we share and we help other people to learn about this thing.
For sure.
Knowing that not everyone's on the internet, we hope that there is enough people on the internet who can figure out how Kickstarter functions to get this thing off the ground. And then once the game is actually in distribution, that'll be the proof is in the pudding, of course. And so if everybody enjoys it and shares it with their friends, then hopefully some more people want to buy it. And maybe we can go to a second print run. We're lined up to go to the general conference session in 2020.
Nice.
Hopefully that all goes ahead, and hopefully we're there. Hopefully we're there with more product, and I don't know. Maybe we've made some really big stuff ups in this one, and we actually need to like make a version 2.
Right.
But it's an exciting project, and I hope that we can get it delivered to you before Christmas, so that you can give it to your family as a Christmas gift.
Right.
But there is a little bit of fear in the back of my mind that it's going to be more like January, February, once all the distribution companies and the shipping and it's just the shipping on the slow boats and the pallet loads of things to different countries. I'm fearing that that's going to add a level of complication that I wasn't hoping for.
All that logistics that I'm hearing that you're learning, I have no idea about. It makes it a lot more complex. I'm very happy and very excited about this, and especially knowing that everything happens elsewhere a lot of the times, but this one is happening here. Well, I'm assuming the whatever you're making, and
all
it's
the
going
good
to come
things come out of
here.
Australia.
Yeah, so I think that I'm excited to think that whatever I buy in the US usually takes forever to come, and this time around it will come quicker than to me in Queensland than other places.
It's actually being produced in China.
Okay, but we're closer, aren't we? I don't know.
It's hard to do anything of scale without going to China.
100%.
And so we've actually already flown over to Hong Kong to meet with the different companies that would produce this.
Right. So different companies are involved.
Well, so we went and we talked with a number of companies, and then out of that process, we decided to go with a singular company.
Right.
And that singular company has a bunch of sister companies that do different parts of the manufacturing.
Sure.
But we wouldn't have known all that unless we went to Hong Kong and walked into their factory. And it's quite a funny story. We literally went into the factory, into the head office, and it was above a jeweler on the second level of a high-rise building in Hong Kong. And we walked up to the front counter, and it's a busy office. There's 170 people working on the second and third floor of this building for this one company.
Right.
And we said, we'd like to talk to somebody. And they said, great, who do you want to talk to? I said, I don't know, somebody in charge, somebody like a manager. And they said, oh, great, well, who have you been chatting to already? And I said, no one. She said, okay, well, have you got an appointment? And I said, no. And she's like, okay, well, where are you from? I said, Sydney. And she's like, okay. And I said, it's all right, we're willing to wait. And so I just walked over and we sat in the waiting room. And just
Did they make you wait long?
They escorted us to a boardroom, and they said, everyone's in a meeting right now, but we'll get you to talk to somebody. And it was about an hour and somewhere between 40 minutes and an hour and a half. I can't remember. But we eventually were chatting to the guy who was behind the game called Pie Face.
Oh, I never heard of that.
There's a game called Pie Face where you get if you Google Pie Face, grandpa and kid or something like that, you'll see this game where you get like a cream pie to the face completely randomly. And this YouTube clip of this grandpa and this kid playing, and the kid gets it in the face and the grandpa bursts out laughing at him.
All right.
That video went to millions and millions of people, and that launched this game into the stratosphere.
Wow.
And we were sitting there at the table chatting with the guy who was essentially the production manager for that product.
Yeah.
Before and after the game was successful. And so We met with this guy and his team, and that's eventually who we decided to go with for the actual manufacturing.
Okay, good. So it sounds like you have a good experience, production line company who are obviously contracting to do this. So that's good. So I'm hoping that the Kickstarter is that kick in and it gets fulfilled. Is it a secret number, or can we know what is the number that you desire to have for it to actually for it to happen, or there's, I don't know. I don't remember. I've been in Kickstarters, but I don't remember if you actually put a number in there where you have to reach.
Kickstarter, you definitely need a goal. You need a set amount. For example, $50,000, $100,000.
Okay.
I guess the last one that I watched closely was the Conflict Beautiful series, the Conflict of the Ages series.
Yes.
Did in Germany. Really nice books. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat. And I think they set their goal, funnily enough, at $144,000 US, because I think in Australian dollars we see it automatically converted when we log into Kickstarter.
Yeah,
I think it was $190,000 here, but they actually that was a joke in America. It was $144,000 that they were chasing.
Right.
I honestly can't tell you. I'm sad to say, I honestly can't tell you exactly how much money this is going to take to pull off.
Okay.
One of the things that has to be considered is that shipping. If you charge shipping as part of the project, that shipping becomes part of the goal. So if I, for example, put $50,000 and I don't actually remember that shipping becomes part of that, then everybody that adds $10, $20, $30 of shipping to their product, the goal's actually achieved far sooner than what I might have wanted it to be achieved.
Okay.
And so part of setting that goal is deciding whether or not we charge shipping up front as part of the pledges, or whether we charge shipping later on through back-a-kit, through a post-campaign survey.
Right.
That's a decision we haven't been able to make yet because we don't have super accurate figures on the shipping.
Sure.
And even more specifically, the pricing model that we choose to go with. So a lot of games offer free shipping, and the way that they're able to do that is because they build into the price of the game.
Sure, they increase the price.
They increase the price, usually by roughly $10, and then they're able to offer $2 shipping or $3 shipping to most places.
Okay.
That whole process is one that I wish I could farm out. But it doesn't seem to be that simple to do. And so certainly farming out the actual shipping, I'm not going to be packing these in my own garage and sending them out.
Sure.
But just the whole quoting process, understanding the prices and understanding how to structure that is certainly a steep learning curve, and we're going through that right now. And so time's ticking.
Sure.
And we're shooting for a July launch at some point in July. And a lot of things to consider before then. Okay,
awesome. Well, I'm hoping that everybody else listening, and if you're listening and you know that somebody doesn't listen to podcasts, or I know a lot of people who aren't will be interested in this, who don't have a clue about this podcast idea. Tell them about it. It's in July. We don't know the date yet, but you telling us it's in July, Kyle, and I'll believe it. I'll hold on to that promise. It's not a promise, but I hope I hold on to that idea, and let us hope that it happens in July.
No pressure.
Yeah. I'm sure you already have enough pressure with your own self. So.
I've set deadlines multiple times before, but this is honestly the first deadline I've advertised, and so certainly the intention is not to disappoint you.
Excellent. Well, thanks for that, Kyle. On behalf of all board gamers, thank you. Before I let you go, I know you have something in the back burner.
Sure.
What is it?
Yeah, I guess during this process, I was thinking about all the other things. Like, one board game is just not going to suit everybody. Mm-hmm. And it's being a large niche product board game. It's going to be more expensive than some people can afford.
Right.
And I was chatting with a designer, and long story short, I created another card game. Okay. And the card game is called Catch Canaan.
Catch Canaan.
Catch Canaan. Yeah. Have you ever played the card game Billionaire?
Yes, I love it. You yell out, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So you try and collect all the industries of gold or oil or finance or whatever it is.
100%, yes.
So essentially, Catch Canaan is you trying to collect a tribe So all the different tribes that inherited land in Canaan land.
Okay.
I can actually, like, because we're chatting on the video, I'm actually going to show you some artwork while we're talking.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
But find a deck here. Okay, so essentially, instead of a taxman, there's a golden calf, and instead of a billionaire, there's the Ark of the Covenant.
Dude, that looks
and they're
good.
obviously the things that you want to take into battle with your tribe.
Yeah. Nice.
And that's just like one card. I can't find the others right now. I don't want to waste everyone's time. But essentially, it's a card game. It is very, very similar to Billionaire with like a minor tweak. All brand new original artwork, and the art is really the thing that's for sale, and the game is just a bonus, but the art is exceptional. I've really enjoyed the artist's work as he put that together, and so it would be a much lower price point than GoYe. It's a much smaller product. It's easier to ship. It's a fun, friendly game up to 12 players instead of Billionaire, which is a 6-player game.
Right.
6 or 8 players, maybe. I think it's 8 players. We played a 12-player game of Catch Canaan.
That would be crazy. That would be cool.
The table, because you play it a round table, so you've all got access to trading cards with each other.
Yeah.
The table wasn't quite big enough, so there's people sitting and then people standing above them trading. And so it was just an absolute mess of arms and screaming and laughter.
Yeah.
Man, I had a sore throat for days. It was hilarious.
Yeah, it's one of those games that I don't know why. Again, talking about that addiction, it's addictive. I mean, when you play that, you just kind of play just one round. You have to keep on playing more and more. And I wish you guys who are listening will see the artwork that Kyle showed me just now. I'm tempted to put it on YouTube, but I won't because I know we'll have to wait, I guess. But the calf looks really good. Golden calf. It's just. I think I'm gonna have fun, and I'm looking forward to it. Oh, who is that?
That's Naphtali.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Cool.
That's actually one of my favorite bits of art. That one. So.
Yeah. It looks good. It looks like he's ready to take the promised land. Are they gonna come in this little case that you have in there, or they just?
No. This is
okay.
This
that's
is just like a sample mock-up.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you ever seen that's another one there. That's Asher.
Yeah. All right. Very prayerful.
So have you ever seen like Exploding Kittens or even Billionaire itself? It's just a small twin deck of like a box that holds a twin deck, two decks of cards.
Right.
Yeah, so it'll just be sort of like that, just a small box.
Okay, no worries. Sounds good. I look forward to that one too. That one is not going to come anytime until the other project is finished. I'm understood. Is that right?
Yeah, it's hard enough to find enough spare time late at night or on Sunday morning to do one board game outside of a full-time job. And so, one project at a time.
One project at a time. Okay. Well, conference people, if you ever listen to this, just give Kyle enough time because we really need these games. It's part of the health of the church, especially the younger people. We need. I mean, I classify myself as young. I already say I have teenage kids, but I had them early. We need this stuff, so please give him time so that he can do these projects. I'm excited. So thank you so much, Kyle. Is there anything that you would like us to know or share with us as we conclude today?
Yeah, essentially, if anyone's interested, they need to head to www.goye.games.
Right.
GoYe.games will make that the mother hub. We'll make that the website where all the stuff happens. And so the best thing for you to do would be to go to that website and actually just click on the I want one button or yes please button and just give us your email address.
Right.
And then once we've got your email address, you'll be part of the system. You'll learn more of the story. Anything happens in the future, we'll let you know. And essentially what we're offering for those people who sign up early, the plan is at this stage to offer a 24-hour window where we launch the Kickstarter project, but we don't tell anybody except for those people that are on the email list.
Nice.
And within that 24-hour period, you'll basically have first dibs at a pioneer price version of the game. So we'll basically say we've got like 600 emails on the list. We will give... we'll make a reward level, 600 items of the board game, cheaper than everybody else. And we'll give you 24 hours to lock it in before we actually start advertising the Kickstarter's open.
Nice. Excellent.
That's the aim.
That's the aim. Thank you for sharing that. I don't know you shared that before. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. That's good. I think I'm going to sign up with a couple of my email addresses so that I don't miss it, just in case I miss one. I'll put one from work, hopefully work of mine. I look forward to it. And you know what I'm looking forward to, Kyle? I'm looking forward to when the time that this launches, time goes by, every Adventist has one in their home, and you're bringing the deluxe edition in a wooden box. I'm that kind of person. I have a deluxe Scrabble, and my wife kind of like gave me a hard time. Sorry, sweetheart, if you're listening to this, because I paid a lot of money for it, but I just couldn't not buy that one. So I'm looking forward to that. Awesome. So, and the card game as well. So excellent. Awesome. Thank you so much, Kyle. Oh, do you have social media a link to GoYe? Like, do you have an Instagram account when you're pre-releasing stuff and that kind of stuff?
Facebook's probably the easiest at this stage. And so if people want to follow us on Facebook, at the moment it's called GoYe, the Discipleship Board Game.
Okay.
At this stage, I think in a week or so I'll scale that back to just GoYe, the board game.
Okay.
And so you can find us there. If you type that in, you'll find that board game. You'll find the announcements. You'll find videos. We actually, in the last week, I've played a few times, and I've uploaded some videos of the games as we play, or different things that happen while we play in the comments. So click on the photo, look through the comments, and you'll find some other videos as well. And so, follow us there.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. Well, guys, just go check it out, sign up, like it, do everything that you need to do so that you can have this game. I'm going to have it. I hope you have it too. And then we can verse each other. I like to win. So hopefully you want to win. Be on the team that is going to win. I hear that it's going to be individual as well as teamwork in the game, depending on how you want to play. So thank you so much, Kyle. I appreciate it. Thank you for the Sunday. Thank you for giving us some of your Sunday. And now you can go back to design games and make us happy.
Thanks for your time, Dan.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you everyone for listening to this interview. I hope that you can do whatever I suggested for you to do about this. And if you have an opportunity to check it out today, don't miss it out. So just do it now and subscribe to that newsletter so the kickstart actually does happen and takes place, and we can have it as soon as possible. Meanwhile, I would like to invite you to consider your commitment to God. And today, I choose to love God. What about you?
Remember to subscribe to this podcast, like it, share it, hashtag it, comment, and find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and Tumblr as Adventist Reflections. God bless you.